This episode brought to you by MeepleRealty.com, your source for high-quality custom board game inserts. Meeple Realty, think inside the box.
The ashes from the First Great War still darken the snow in 1920s Europa. The capitalistic city-state known simply as the Factory, which fueled the war with heavily armored mechs, has closed its doors, drawing the attention of several nearby countries. With characters from 5 factions converging on a small but highly desired swath of land, who will gain fame and fortune by establishing their empire as the leader of Eastern Europa? Bjorn, the descendant of a renowned Viking family, was saved from perishing in a blizzard by a kindly muskox. After surviving the ordeal, Bjorn took the creature as his mount and named him Mox. Together, they embarked on a series of adventures across the land, serving as ambassadors to other tribes, executing military operations, and seeking out new oil reserves. The king has now sent them southward to add new villages and farms to the kingdom, either by diplomacy or by force, as well as to explore the factory with the hope of gaining a technological advantage for future wars. As Bjorn arrives in the area surrounding the factory, he has heard tale of one other faction that has arrived with similar plans. During the Great War, Gunther and his wolves led elite mech squads across the forests and mountains of Saxony and Europa. His name was both feared and respected, and his jacket grew heavy with medals of honor. Now that the war is over, the Emperor has asked Gunther to embark on a new adventure to the east, where he sees a fresh opportunity to expand the Saxony foothold on the unclaimed lands surrounding the factory.
Alright, so here we go. Now, when you're playing as the Ultima, the human player, yourself, always goes first. So we're going to do that now. The question is, what exactly are we going to do? So we're up here. The Nordic kingdoms are all the way up on the north. We have access to oil and wood right off the bat, or without with just one move, basically, we could have access to the metal right there, or to food, or over here with the village, we could recruit more workers. And remember, that's because with the Nordic kingdoms, the workers from the very beginning can have the swim ability. They can move across rivers. I think I'll focus on 2 things in the beginning. I'm going to focus on upgrading, which requires oil. You can see there you got to pay 2 oil. And I'm going to focus on enlisting. Now, right now, enlisting, which is these 4 tokens here, what happens when you enlist, for instance, if I took this one, I would now gain a bonus at certain times based on what the Ultima does. I would gain a power bonus, and I would also take this and put it up here on any of these, so I could gain 2 power, 2 coins, 2 popularity, or 2 combat cards as a one-time bonus. And here you can see there's coins and popularity and combat cards. So what do I do here? I think right off the bat, I need to set myself up to generate food and oil. So, and sorry, this is left over from my last game, or this guy shouldn't be anywhere yet. That's used to show what your last action was. So we are going to go here and move first. And what I'm going to move is I will move this worker here to this farm, and this worker here to that oil field, or to that tundra, which essentially is an oil field. And so after doing the top action, which this is a mine that I can build, but that's with a different action here. But the top action here was to move 2 different units, 1 space each. All right. And then the bottom action is pay 2 oil and then upgrade and gain a coin. Well, I don't have any oil, so all I could do is move. And now it's the Ultima's turn. Try a slightly different angle here. I think this might work a little better. But so now it's the Ultima's turn. And we draw this card. Okay, so first, if the Ultima was this faction, which the Ultima is not, that faction is up here, and I believe that's one of the expansion factions that I don't have. So we ignore this. So instead, the Automa is going to do this: move one worker. And there's all these. So here we go. Move one worker. There's these reference cards to really help you remember how the Automa works. So in the case of the worker, select Automa worker closest to Altima's base. All right, here's the base right here. And both these workers are one space away. So you look and see, well, what's the tiebreaker? Reading order. Okay, so reading order in the English language is what it's referring to, which is left to right, top to bottom. So this worker is the one we're going to choose. Moving on down, we check to see what the valid hexes are in the neighborhood of any Ultima unit, or if there's no Ultima units on the board, in the neighborhood of the Ultima's base. Because here's one key thing: an Ultima on the base doesn't have a neighborhood, okay? Because then the base is not a territory, and the base does not have a neighborhood, all right? So, or I should say Ultimas on the base don't have a neighborhood. But since we have Ultimas out on the board, we have two of them, one here and one here, then we just use this first one in the neighborhood of any Ultima unit. All right. Now, a neighborhood, just so y'all know, is any hex adjacent to that particular hex. So this Ultima right here, his neighborhood will be this hex and this hex and this hex, as well as the hex he's currently on. All right. So valid hexes include in the neighborhood of any Ultima unit with no enemy unit and no Ultima worker. So in this case, and by the way, it does clarify other than the one selected. So in this case, the valid hexes would be this one, and this one. So next we pick up the selected worker. So we pick them up. And that's important because sometimes what's down here could be affected if the worker was still on the board. So choose a destination hex. So valid hex, which again were these three, because I'm not sure if I mentioned it before, but the Ultimas do not recognize the water as anything other than what it is. So they actually can go on the water. Oh, except for one thing. As I mentioned in the setup video, at the beginning, the Ultima, these first four spaces, the Ultima is unable to advance on the water. So in fact, this actually would not be a valid hex, because this cube is currently on this space, and so as long as it's on one of these four spaces, then the Ultimas cannot advance across water. So in fact, the only two valid spaces would be this one and this one. So we know the two valid hexes. Now in the neighborhood of the most Ultima units, okay, and not in the neighborhood of an enemy combat unit. All right, so in the neighborhood of the most Ultima units would be either one of these, okay, because both of them were in the neighborhood of this one, and so they both count. And if this guy counted, then it would be this space. It would have two, one, two, both in this neighborhood. But since he's on the base, he doesn't have a neighborhood, so it's still just this worker that's counting, one here and one here. So then tiebreaker, because both of them qualify closest to the factory. The factory is up here, so this space right there is the one we're going with, and that's where you place the selected worker on the destination hex. That's where that worker is going to go. Now that sounds like a lot, and I'll be honest, when you first play as the Ultima or play against the Ultima, it can be a little mind-bendy figuring out all this stuff. Also, these reference cards are just reference cards. The rulebook itself is much more detailed on exactly how they work. But I've found that after a few plays, it's now pretty intuitive, and just a quick look back at the reference cards really helps me get through this. And I'm not going to go through in detail every time like that, but maybe as each new action comes up we haven't seen before, I will. All right, so now this is what the Ultima does. This is what the Ultima gets right here, okay? So if we were using this faction over here, then it says the Ultima would get a mech, but we're not using that, so we ignore that portion, the portion in parentheses, and instead the Ultima is going to get a worker and a coin. So there's a coin for the Ultima, and then a worker, and when they get a new unit, it goes to their home base. And by the way, the coins, the money in this game, those are the victory points at the end of the game. So right now I have 7 and the Ultima has 6, not including any sort of in-game scoring. Now this right here would be if I had enlisted with, I believe it's this one, no, with this one, yes. So if I had enlisted this token revealing that enlistment bonus, then anytime this showed up on an Ultima card, I would gain a coin. However, obviously I have not enlisted anyone yet, so that has no effect. And then this indicates that this will move forward one space. And now we're back to my turn. So that seemed like a lot. It can be initially, but you'll see, I think, that as we play, this is going to really pick up the pace a little bit. It's going to speed up a little bit. So I think what we should do now is go ahead and produce. Okay, and so I have one worker in the oil field to produce one oil, and a worker on a farm to produce one food. And one cool thing about this game is that when you produce the stuff, the resources actually go out on the board, which means someone can come and steal them from you if you're not careful. So I feel like that's a little bit different from the way things normally go in a lot of games. Normally, you produce it and you take it into your personal stash or whatever. Okay, so you'll notice up here it does say pay, but that is something that as I bring more workers out, then I might have to start paying something. So for instance here, if I had these two workers were out, then now whenever I produce, I have to pay 1 power to do so. But fortunately, I don't have those workers out, though I certainly will want to get them out relatively soon. This says, so I produce on 2 different hexes, which I did. And it's important to note that you actually produce, everyone on the hex you choose will produce. So if I had 3 workers on one of these hexes, then all 3 workers would produce on that hex. Next up, down here, you can see that if I had 4 wood to pay, then I could build a building and I would gain 2 coins. I don't have 4 wood to pay, so we're not dealing with that right now. And back onto the Ultima's turn. Okay, let's see what we've got. Now this symbol is only if you're playing easy mode. It basically means the Ultima skips its turn, so we're just ignoring that. Now look here. All right, we do have this particular faction playing as the Ultima. This symbol means that if the Ultima has 5 power or more, it's going to attack one of my military units. You can see though that the Ultima only has 1 power, so we don't have to worry about that right now. And then over here, so then there's a slash, meaning, okay, well, if that doesn't work, then we're going to do this. And in this case, it's move one, there we go, move a worker. Okay, so you're going to move the worker closest to the home base, and obviously a worker on the home base is the closest. And the worker is then going to move out to a valid hex. And remember, one of the stipulations for valid hex is no other Ultima workers. This is the only hex that doesn't also have an Ultima worker, so that is the only valid hex for that worker to go to. Next up, the Ultima will gain another worker and a coin. So there's the worker. The Ultima gains another coin, which puts the Ultima at 7 total coins. Then I would gain popularity if I had uncovered that, but I haven't yet. And then here we are going to move the Ultima track to here. And you know what? I think I'm going to slide this over just a little bit. And I'm going to put the Ultima coins out here so you'll be able to see them a little easier every time we come down and check up down here. So now it's me again. And I think I'm going to come here and I'm going to trade. So I spend 1 coin. You can see here it says pay 1 coin, trade with workers. So basically any space of the worker, I can put any resource I want. And I'm actually going to take 2 oils and I'm going to put them out. And you know what, let me show you why I'm going to take 2 oils before I pan up. Each time I upgrade, it's going to take 2 oils to upgrade. I have 1 oil out there already. And so if I produce 1 more time in that oil field, it'll give me a 4th oil. And if I can upgrade twice, I can get the enlistment cost down to just 1. And I'll show you how that works when we do it. But for now, these 2 oil will come right out here. Might as well put them in the tundra with the worker in the oil field. It's not a good idea to store your oil in your farmland. Usually, you never know when an oil spill might happen. Okay, so that is the end of our turn, because the other action that could happen on that particular column there would be to pay metal to build a mech, but we don't have any metal yet, so that's not going to happen. All right, so up next here we've got, okay, this is an interesting one. First, we're going to select the Ultima character. So obviously we've got Gunther down here. All right, valid hex is a neighborhood of any Ultima unit. Okay, so in the neighborhood of any Ultima unit is any of these 3 hexes here. Now, okay, this is not exactly clear, but it's the neighborhood of any Ultima unit. And let me pull up the rule book real quick. All right, so you can see here, valid territories. Territories in the neighborhood of any Ultima unit that contain the factory or an encounter token. Okay, so I feel like as far as the reference cards goes, this is probably the one that leaves the most to be desired. But basically, in the neighborhood of any Ultima unit and the or that contains the factory, if the Ultima has no factory card so far, or a hex with an encounter token. Well, again, we can't move across, or the Ultima can't move across water yet. We do have an encounter token here, though, so that's going to be the valid hex. All right, so again, pick up the character, choose destination hex, valid hex, with no enemy unit and no Ultima mech. Okay, that does not have an enemy unit, does not have an Ultima mech. We don't need a tiebreaker, so we just place the character here. And then you can see character picks up encounter token, if any, and that's all it is. It just basically, he'll come around gobbling up encounter tokens. It doesn't give him any bonuses. It just prevents me from gaining any bonus from using these. And or if he had landed on the factory, then he would gain a factory card at random, an upgrade card at random. Okay, so so now you can see we did this, and that slash would be or that, but since we did this one, we ignore that second part. The Ultima is going to gain a worker and a combat card. All right, so here's the worker. And when they gain a combat card, it is a mystery to me. I don't get to look at it. When the Ultima uses the combat cards, it's at random, so we don't really know what they've got in their hand available to them. And again, if I had done this enlistment, I would gain a combat card bonus. And now the star, or the cube's going to move. All right, they're almost able to cross water, not quite yet. And now it's my turn. All right, so we're going to go to move. Okay, so I think this is going to be the objective that I go after: achieve tactical mastery, have 8 or more combat cards in hand, and at least 1 combat victory star. And because of that, it's going to be important for me to start deploying some mechs. So I think I also am going to need some more workers too to really get this thing moving. So I'm going to do 2 things here. I'm going to move this worker to here, and I'm going to move this worker here. So this worker will start recruiting more workers, and this worker will start producing metal. And while it, except if I do that, I can't move him yet. Because if I do that, then I don't have anybody there to use the oil that I've got there. You have to have a unit in this. You have to be controlling the space with the resources when you want to use them. So he can't move yet. So instead, I'll actually move Bjorn down into that space for now, and then we'll try to get some stuff happening here in a second with the metal. All right, so those are my 2 movement. Now, we do in fact have the 2 oil in that tundra space that we were just looking at. So there we go. I'm going to take 2 of those off. And now we can upgrade. All right, so when we upgrade, how do I want to do this? I think I'm going to come over here, and I need 8 combat cards. So we're gonna pull the cube off of that one so we can start stocking up on combat cards, and I'm gonna drop it down here to make enlisting a little bit cheaper. Okay, so you can see now that when we use this action, we can get 2 combat cards instead of just 1, and then enlistment only costs 2 food instead of 3. And I really like this, by the way, this whole thing about moving a cube from the top to make something better and then to the bottom to make something less expensive. And by the way, just to be clear, I could have put this anywhere on the bottom. Okay, it didn't have to be in the space directly below. That's just how it worked out this time. All right, so, and we can't forget, I also get a coin for upgrading. And that's the end of my turn. So next we have the Altima. Okay, so we ignore this because the Ultima is not that faction. So instead, they would move a mech, but they don't have a mech out. So instead, we will move a worker. Now, here's an interesting thing, though. Check this out. Remember that with the worker, a valid hex to move it to is in the neighborhood of any Ultima unit with no enemy unit and no Ultima Worker. Well, all 3 of these spaces have an Ultima Worker. We can't move across the water yet. We're almost, but not yet, with the Ultima. So these 2 Ultima Workers have nowhere to go, which means that none of this is valid. None of that can work. So we just skip it. And instead, the Ultima is going to gain a worker and a mech. All right, and then if I had enlisted that, I would have gotten popularity, and the star does move. So you can see now it's moving to this space. The Ultima now is free to move across the water. So it's going to start spreading out a lot quicker now that it's free to do that. And now we're back to my turn. Okay, so we definitely want to upgrade one more time. Well, at minimum one more time to make enlistment cheaper, because we want to try to knock these enlistment bonuses out as quickly as possible once we start doing it. So I think we'll come here and but you know what, actually I think producing is going to be the better option. So I could come here and I could get oil and then also a food if I wanted to. It's going to cost me 1 coin. Also remember that means 1 point, because coins are points. But if I come to produce, then I can get a new worker and an additional oil, still be set up to upgrade next turn, and also have that extra worker to start doing some additional stuff. So I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to come here, produce on 2 different spaces. One of the spaces is going to be a worker. You can see up here in this village. So got a worker there. And then this worker will produce oil. And then again, the bottom action there would be to build, but we don't have enough wood to do that, so we're ignoring that for now. And it's the Ultima's turn again. All right, so here we go. Okay, the Ultima's going to make its trek towards the factory. So now that we have access to get across the water, let's look at this one more time. All right, so select the Ultima character. Valid hexes are in the neighborhood of any Ultima unit containing the factory or encounter tokens. Well, no neighborhood of an Ultima unit contains the factory yet. However, it does contain a encounter token here and an encounter token here. So then the question is with this tiebreaker. Okay, so choose destination hex, valid hex with no enemy unit, no Ultima mech, tiebreaker closest to the factory. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4, whereas this one is 1, 2. So the Ultima character will go there, get rid of that encounter token, and that's the Ultima's move. And then the Ultima will gain a mech, nothing there, and the cube's going to move as well. So here's the Ultima's mech, and this cube moves. Okay, next up, let's see. We're going to go ahead and we're going to move first. All right, so I think we will move one of these workers to the farm and my character here to get an encounter. So when he lands on the encounter, you move the encounter token off the board and draw from the encounter deck. All right, so we see this kind of scene going on here, and then I kind of like how it lets you kind of draw your own conclusions about exactly what's going on here, and then give you a few options. Pet the reindeer and flirt with the locals at the refinery. That will gain me $2 and 1 popularity. Or stock up on oil for the journey ahead. Pay $2 to gain 4 oil. Or convince a soldier that reindeer aren't real. Pay 2 popularity to enlist 1 recruit. Okay, so we know that one of our goals here is like that we're trying to focus on is the recruitment, the enlistment. So that could be good, even though we're paying 2 popularity. But you know, not the worst thing in the world. But this right here, I like that, gaining the 4 oil. Lots of upgrading that can go on there. Gain $2 and 1 popularity. That's also good, but not as necessarily as useful. I'm going to go with stock up on oil for the journey ahead, just because I really want to try to get some of these upgrades done. So I'm going to have to pay $2. So there's the $2. And we gain 4 oil. And it goes in the same space as the encounter occurred. So all that goes right there in the mountains. Okay, and then this card just goes to the bottom of the encounter deck. Okay, now let's not forget that we're going to pay 2 oil here. And I'm going to take the oil from the tundra, from the oil field. That's where I'm going to take this oil from. There's a 2 oil. Now we need to upgrade, and I'm going to go ahead and I want to see if I upgrade here, then I can move 3 people at the same time. If I upgrade with this one, then I'll be able to produce on 3 different spots, which could be good. This one increases my popularity. You know what? I've got 3 workers out. Let's take this one. So we now can produce on 3 different spots at the same time, and enlistment only costs 1 food. And of course, we gain 1 coin for upgrading. All right, so now let's see what the Ultima does. They're going to move a worker. So we choose the worker closest to the factory, which is any of these 3 workers right here. And now we're going to look at the neighbor. So we got to check what our valid hexes are, which is in the neighborhood of any Ultima unit. So, I mean, basically all of these hexes are valid hexes because they also have no enemy unit and no Ultima Worker. And then we choose the destination hex, which is going to be in the neighborhood of the most Ultima units, which I believe is going to be this one, because we have 1, 2, 3 Ultima units there. And I don't think there's any other space that has 3, so that is where the worker is going to go. All right, so next up, the Ultima is going to gain 3 power. So it goes right up to there, and then the cube is going to move. And that cube keeps inching more and more towards this 2 space, and when that happens, instead of using the green side, we'll start using the orange side, which can be more aggressive and more difficult to deal with. All right, so now what are we going to do? We are here. I think we're going to go here. We're going to gain... Well, we got to pay 1 coin. All right, so pay 1 coin. Gain 2 combat cards. And we have 2 2s, all right. So that puts us at 3. We need 8 total to achieve this objective. And then we're going to pay 1 food. And we have that food up in the farmland, so we're going to take that food right there from the farm. And then we will enlist. Now, who do we want to enlist? I think there's the popularity one. This one is for combat cards. Yep, that's what we're going to do because we're trying to get that objective. And we'll go ahead, get 2 combat cards by placing the recruit there. All right, so we have a 5 and a 2. There's only 6 5s in that entire deck. So getting a 5 and a 2 is pretty fantastic. That puts us at 5 cards total. So that's where we are now with those. And we gain 3 coins for doing the enlist action as well. All right, next up we have the Ultima again. Here we go. All right, nope, they're not that faction. So instead, a mech is going to move. Now, I don't believe we have seen this one yet, so let's take a look at the card. Select Ultima mech closest to Ultima's base. All right, well, one of the ones on the base, obviously, and actually not supposed to pick it up quite yet. Valid hexes in neighborhood of any Ultima unit with no enemy unit and no Ultima combat unit. All right, so basically these space. Oh, I'm sorry. Be any of these spaces. Oh, any of these spaces plus the spaces where the workers are. Pick up the selected mech. All right. Okay, so now we have to choose a valid hex with the shortest distance from enemy combat unit. Ignore units on bases unless no enemy combat units are on the board. Okay, well, the shortest distance to an enemy combat unit is going to be this space, I believe. 1, 2, 3, because if I was here, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, and if I was here, 1, 2, well, that'd be 1, 2, 3 as well. So then what is the tiebreaker? Closest to the factory? Well, both this space and this space are 1 away from the factory. So second tiebreaker is reading order, so it's going to be this space right here. All right, and then we place the mech. Okay. Now, oh, look at this. The Ultima gets 4 power, which is going to boost it up to 8 power now. All right. And then we have another movement on this track here. Okay, so next up, do we go ahead and produce again? Or no, we want to get, I think we want to move in, we want to do a movement. And I'll tell you why. We have no mechs on the board. Meanwhile, the Automa is stocking up on both mechs and power. We need metal to get mechs. So I think that what we want to do is we want to move one of these workers to where the mechs can be built. And oh, but if we because now I know obviously I want to move one of my workers, but my other workers are good where they are, and my character cannot move yet because we don't have Riverwalk or Seaworthy activated yet. So I think I'm actually going to need to produce one more time. That way I'll have another worker that will have a reason to move, and then we can, yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to produce. All right, so move this here, and remember we can produce on 3 different tiles now, so one of these will be a worker. So the worker gets produced there. Then we have another oil and food produced there and there. And then the bottom action there, again, is to build, but I don't have the wood to build, so we're going to leave that alone for now. All right, so next up, we have the Ultima again. All right, not that faction, so we're going to move a worker, where the Ultima is going to move a worker. So one of the ones on the home base. And then we've got to look in the neighborhood of any Ultima unit with no enemy unit and no Ultima worker. So basically the outskirts of everything we have going on here, or actually technically, I'm sorry, not really. These 2 spaces will be valid as well because there's no Ultima workers there, just Ultima combat units. All right, so I already picked up the worker. We got to choose which one. Now this space right here is going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 Ultimas in its neighborhood, or yeah. So I think that probably is going to be the most. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I don't see anywhere else. So that worker will go there. And then the Ultima gains a coin, putting the Ultima at 8 total coins. There we go. Okay, and then as you can see, the star is there, so that does move. One more. I really feel like we might be falling behind here, y'all. Last game I only lost by 2 points to the Ultima, but I don't like that they're already about to hit the 2 spot here, and I haven't really made a whole lot of headway yet. I do have a lot of resources stocked up, But, let's keep going and see what we can do. So now we're going to move again. And I'm going to move this worker here. All right. And let's move this worker here. We can double up on some food production and then move on from there. All right. So for the upgrade, I'm going to take 2 oil from the spot with my character. Just to be clear, I'm going to take 2 oil from here, all right, because I had 4 there. That oil in the back there is now out of, I can't use it right now because I have nobody there actually controlling it. So that's one important thing about where your workers and your characters are. Okay, so like I said, pay the 2 oil, check, got that, and then we're going to upgrade. And I think we're going to go ahead and do this so we can move 3 different people at a time. And we're going to put this down here to make the mechs cheaper to build. And then, of course, we gain 1 coin for upgrading as well. All right, so now for the Ultima, they're going to move a mech, all right? So we've got closest to Ultima's base, obviously going to be this mech here, in the neighborhood of any Ultima unit in the neighborhood of any Ultima unit with no enemy units and no Ultima combat units, all right? So basically any of these spaces will be fine, and any of these spaces here will be fine, okay? So obviously we're gonna pick up the mech, and then valid hex shortest distance from enemy combat unit, which is going to be right here. So now they have control of the factory, which is not a good thing because the factory does count as 3 territories at the end of the game. And you can see that over here, the mechs or the Ultimas get 3 coins per territory at the end of the game. So essentially, them controlling that factory at the end of the game is worth 9 points for them. Next up, they will get 1 worker and a coin. I'll put the workers right here just because I think it might be a little difficult to see how many are there on that black backdrop. So let's just put them right there. Okay, so now 1 coin, I can't forget that. And finally, that moves there, which means now I take the entire discard pile, I shuffle it back into the Ultima deck. All right, and we're gonna start using the 2 side instead. Okay, so I don't know how I feel about my progress. I feel like I may have missed some key points where I could have made some better decisions, and I may be behind the curve here. I don't like that, the last game I played where I almost beat the Ultima, I already had like 2 stars at this point, I think. So anyway, we'll see how it goes. Let's go on and I'll sign off here. I think this is a good place to stop with the Ultima switching from the 1 to the 2 side of the deck. We can come back next time and see exactly what happens now that it is in that 2nd stage. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed the video so far. Please give me a thumbs up if you like it. Give me a subscribe if you like the channel. Follow me over on Twitter at boredonlineboardoffline. You can buy t-shirts, support us on Pod Pledge. And until next time, for Board Online, Board Offline.